You're watching our special pre-budget coverage, Budget for Bharat. Today, we shine the spotlight on a sector that's poised to emerge as a true alternative to the world as the demand for everything from smartphones to electronics all ride on this very piece of fine engineering. Of course, I'm talking about the semiconductor industry that has seen interest from global players like Micron and domestic players ranging from Tata Group to Vedanta and Hiranandani Group to HCL, all taking a leap of faith in this sunshine industry, linked very closely to India's semiconductor race to the top, where the government has already earmarked 76,000 crore rupees, is India's dream of also becoming an artificial intelligence powerhouse. Will Budget 2024 add new wings to these emerging sectors? And if so, what does the industry really want? Joining me to discuss this, Ashok Chandak, President IESA, and Manish Maheshwari, co-founder Fanery. Mr. Chandak, if I can start by asking you, there is, of course, a wish list which the semiconductor industry has, but a lot has already been delivered to the semiconductor industry by way of the 76,000 crore rupee outlay. Not a lot of that has yet been consumed. What are your specific expectations from Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman on 1st of February?
Thank you for having me on the show. And yes, that's right. Agree, government has given a very good support. The 70,000 crore was allocated, not fully utilized yet. But we have still high hopes in upcoming budget because semiconductor industry is also pretty complex and a very huge ecosystem. There are various facets of it. We are just at the beginning of this actually. So if you look at the overall semiconductor market in India, which is almost $40 billion consumption in the country, expected to grow to $100 billion in 2030. It's a huge number. And still a lot of that is being used as imports and not more of the local sourcing. So there is a huge opportunity for semiconductor which to be consumed in India as well as to be deployed for the global market. So with this, the expectations are still high, both on the semiconductor manufacturing, which includes the foundry services, as well as the ATMP or outsourced assembly test capacity,
right,
as well as on design and research.
Okay.
And I would say design and research is where there is still a huge scope for additional funding support because these are more of the long-term topics, which will go feed back into the semiconductor manufacturing and assembly activity going forward.
Absolutely. Manish Maheshwari, if I can bring that point off to you. So design-led innovation, design-led manufacturing is a word coming in from Mr. Chandak. But what does that really entail? What should be the focus of the government? Are we looking at new curriculum in colleges? Are we looking at new specializations at IITs and other engineering schools? What is going to really foster this entire design ecosystem, given the fact that manufacturing in any case is happening in Taiwan? Manufacturing may, with some partnerships, offset its roots somehow into Indian states as well. But if design-led innovation is what we are talking about, where does it begin and what can budget do about it?
So let me make a broad point at a higher level, right? Which is basically that in technology and any kind of other things that you're talking about, semiconductors, things at the lower order will become commodity, right? So then either you have to be the lowest cost manufacturer to have value, or you have to move to higher order activities, which is basically a design and sort of, even on technology side, I mean, you have to be the one to think about what is the product innovation versus simply making or coding the software. The same happens here as well. Now, what does that require? That requires a different mindset. That requires a mindset about, okay, do we really understand the customer problem? Are we able to take risk? And our curriculum and our education has to support more of entrepreneurship, more of higher order thinking, being more understanding of the customer need. Because we have been very good, if you think about it, on the coding side of things, when specifications are given to us. And on the manufacturing side, we had our own problems because of the logistics and infrastructure. But hopefully the logistic infrastructure is sort of taken care of, right? So we do have a good shot at manufacturing. But very soon that would also become commodity. So I think in my view, yes. I mean, we have to focus on 2 or 3 things. One is a mindset shift, which is what also the government is trying to do about, this digital India and innovation and startup India that they are doing. Our curriculum also has to sort of be upgraded and more in line with the needs of the industry and the market. We cannot just have the same old curriculum, which is like rooted in 20 years ago or 30 years ago. The world has completely changed. Right. And third is, of course, the ecosystem and government support has to be conducive enough where people are willing to take risk and try something different, try things of the higher order. So
Right.
those are the things, in my view, is what we'll have to focus on, and the budget should also encourage those things.
All right. So hold your thought there, Manish. Mr. Chandak, if I can come back to you on this. Now, of course, there is interesting data on India's overall rise when it comes to electronics exports, India's overall rise when it comes to semiconductors as an industry being set up, and the initiatives taken by the government and by the private sector, as well as the global players coming in. Throw some light on these numbers. What is the kind of vision that you have right now as president of IESA for India's overall electronics export basket, not just smartphones, but electronics of all kinds rising in coming years?
So there are two factors here you asked for, electronics and semiconductor, and let me address both of them. First of all, the electronics market in the country today, as we count 2023, is about $180 billion. And it is expected to increase to about 300 billion plus by 26-27. And bulk of this growth is coming through exports, not only mobile phones. We should see the other sectors also contributing to the export activities. Now, along with this electronics, obviously there is a need for semiconductors because that's the backbone and that's the basic fulcrum. And which I, as mentioned, $100 billion is the expectation of the semiconductor market by 24. And there is a huge scope of export over there.
Okay.
And my view is actually these things will continue to grow provided the design, and I'm coming back to that actually, that acceleration of the design-led manufacturing is going to be very, very crucial for India. As Mr. Maheshwari mentioned, the commoditization, that marketplace is not where India can really play or add value.
Okay.
It's more of the high volume. You produce billions and billions of pieces per day. That is not where we are going to make any value addition. And if we are to be very successful in the global market, it's all design as well as the value addition, which is very, very important. Right. And this is where organizations like IESA, which is the industry body, we are working very closely with the industry constituents, including the government, including we are holding 2-day event this week as we speak to deliberate on these activities of design-led manufacturing and come up with additional recommendations to both central as well as the various state governments as what can be done more so that we tap that $100 billion of upcoming market in the semiconductors and also tap that $300 billion of the electronics market, which is happening by 26-27. So pie is big enough, I would call. Several players, both Indian conglomerate as well as the global guys, several startup and MSMEs are showing huge amount of interest. Yeah. Entrepreneurs are willing to take the risk. And I would see that the additional support as well as the motivation from the government is going to be very, very important to take this fast track acceleration of design-led manufacturing.
All right, design-led manufacturing seems to be the obvious focus here from the semiconductor industry. But Manish Maheshwari, I think when Mr. Chandak is talking about numbers of $100 billion worth of semiconductor exports, $300 billion worth of electronics exports, there is another full animal out there called artificial intelligence, which is likely to add about $1 trillion to India's economy by 2030 to 2035. And this from a statement issued by Rajiv Chandrasekhar a few months ago. The bedrock of artificial intelligence is the chips that power it, and those chips are in fact semiconductors themselves, disguising themselves in multiple augmentations to become those GPUs. So talk to us about the artificial intelligence industry, and are there specific budget expectations, budget related expectations for the AI sector? I understand AI regulations may not make it to the budget speech. I understand Digital India Act may not make it to the budget speech. But what is it that the AI industry, a nascent industry in India, needs to reach that $1 trillion figure?
Yeah, no, very good question. And AI is a game changer, I would say that. I mean, whatever we have seen so far, I think everything is going to be very different as AI becomes mainstream. And it is going to be the next phase of growth for technology. Now, for AI to work, of course, you need not just the semiconductors and the infrastructure, you also need the data centers because it works on large amount of data, and then you need the skill set, people who are talented enough to understand this and sort of build new models and also make the models work for human betterment. And the other aspect, of course, which you touched upon is the regulation. Like, how do we make sure that it is done in the ethical way, and there are enough regulations and ethical guardrails to deal with it, right? So let's talk about each of them one by one. So on the data center, clearly, given the projected growth, India has a very good chance to sort of be the place where large companies would want to store their data and access the data. And also regulation-wise, India has made it mandatory that the data about Indian people should be based in India. So that would mean that the data center
Absolutely. So
would be
from
a
a
big area
DPDP
of growth.
perspective, from announcements already made by players including Reliance Industries about a data center being built in India and many other players actually now jumping the fray, obviously data center does seem to be one priority for India right now when it comes to securing the data of users. But what can Budget 2024 specifically do to incentivize data storage by way of data centers here in India?
Yeah, so I think that would require a financial incentive, number one, and also
So
making
what
the
kind of an
regulations.
incentive do you have in mind here?
Yeah, so data center requires a couple of things, right? One is like location and space, and also electricity and sort of the relevant skill sets to run those data centers. So I think clearly, if you look in the US, states that subsidize data center, I mean, they saw that a lot of these tech companies, made them the hub for data centers, and that requires like subsidized electricity, subsidized infrastructure, so that these huge amount of data can be stored at a very low cost. Right, so that's one. So financial incentives around infrastructure of data centers. Number two would be, I would say, other than data centers, for AI to take off, clearly we have to promote entrepreneurship in AI. I mean, that would require, all the things about on the startup side, which is how we can incentivize startups in the area of AI. How do we promote those entrepreneurs? How do we make sure that they have the right mechanism in terms of tax benefits, grant incentives, investments? So that is another big phase of growth, because what you don't want is that big companies in the US and those in the Bay Area determine the base models, and Indian startups are simply working on the fringes,
Right.
and are dependent on them, because that would again mean that the center of control would lie outside India. So what we have to do is we have to do things in India. And I think companies like ours, like, Fenori is an AI company as well. So we are doing a lot of stuff in the area of creator-based AI. So we feel that there is a lot of scope for AI models to develop, which are relevant and conducive for the Indian audience, and also will take into account the nuances of the data in India,
Right.
including local language content and also visual content, which is very relevant to India.
Yeah.
So I think those are the things I believe if the government can give more support to that, both in terms of pushing in the new Digital India bill, as well as the financial incentive in the upcoming union budget.
All right. Well, that is the word coming in from Manish Maheshwari. Mr. Chandak, before I let you go, my final question to you: how do you help the government of India, the finance minister, prioritize this entire large ecosystem, which begins with semiconductors, goes all the way to artificial intelligence, and perhaps beyond, things that we don't know of yet? How would you help the government prioritize which is top priority right now for the government of India, something that should definitely make it to the budget speech of finance minister? And then going forward in the month of July, when the final budget, the full budget is presented, how would you help prioritize these 2-3 areas which both of you have so eloquently delivered today?
Yeah, thanks. Good question. I just want to clarify the numbers mentioned by me are the total market actually, the $100 billion 2030, it's semiconductor market, not the export. Export may be about 40-50% of that. And the electronics market, I mentioned $300 billion by 26-27.
Right.
Again, is the total market size, not the full
Absolutely.
export.
Right.
Yeah. Then number two, on coming back to your question, yes, I think what we have to look at the two things here. Number one is creating the demand, and number two is filling that demand. Now, creating the demand means that electronics consumption in the country, the computing consumption, including the data center you just mentioned. Now, currently there is a PLI which is running for IT hardware, which is about 7,300 crore. I would say it is not good enough from the data center perspective. What needs to be done is how do we create the demand to have the localization of the data center? One is obviously create the conducive policy so that people do set up the data centers, but also that data storage. Right now, there are a lot of data which is being stored outside of the country. If entire things becomes regulated and then everything gets stored in the country, then I think the things are quite different. And then we can leverage that as a data center for the world, not only for India. Like there are several countries, as you know, they are already running the data centers, and these are data centers for the world. And that's a big opportunity.
Absolutely.
And I know that particularly when I hear some of the conversations with the Minister of State, Mr. Rajiv Chandrasekhar, he's also very well clear, and I think government is definitely working on this data center topic.
All right.
In terms of the prioritization, obviously both the ends to be done, but my view is rather than only looking at the domestic consumption as a demand, we have to look at the global markets.
Right.
Once we keep global markets into mind, we see that the pie is very huge and very big. And that would really allow additional outlay as a support the policies and the regulatory topic. So what do we do as an industry body? I think we work very closely now with the central government, including the state governments. So for example, IESA as an industry body has been working with several governments, be it Karnataka, be it Odisha, Madhya Pradesh, UP, as well as the other states, to provide them inputs so that they develop the right conducive policy to attract
Right.
those investors, provide that business-friendly environment so that the various companies and entrepreneurs, they start to do the developments.
Right.
And that is the priority number one, that, there is a buzz, and you would see that there is already a buzz. Several states have already come out with the policies, and we have given a lot of inputs to them. Same thing on the central government side. Now, the most important thing would be the various schemes those have been rolled out. Those need to be, deployed, executed, and the funding has to be made available, and then go to the next phase.
Absolutely.
So to my perspective, that is already actually that get acceleration done. Micron is one. There are several other names. Those are popping up like Tata and HCL.
Yeah.
I think it's just the beginning.
It's just the
To see
beginning.
such 10, 20 more announcements and activities, and then the things would start rolling out.
Right.
And the other countries, those who have taken a lead about 10, 20 years ago, I think India would be at a similar stage in 5 to 10 years time frame.
Got it. Well, of course, very valid concerns and suggestions there by Mr. Ashok Chandak as well as Manish Maheshwari. Gentlemen, I'm afraid we've completely run out of time, but thank you so much for your inputs here. And we hope a lot of this does make it, if not to the February 1st speech of Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman, then of the speech of the Finance Minister of India when the new government takes office and presents the budget in the month of July. Thank you so much for being with us here on Budget for Bharat. And with that, it's a wrap from me, Karthik Malhotra, signing off. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.